Coach, you got a quarterback battle. How's things going?
Good. You know, all of them have gotten reps for the first team. You know, I know kind of the media availability. You know, they kind of catch different pieces and who goes to what team that day. But just every period, every rep, whether it's group, individual, team, they're all getting rotations with the ones, whether it be Pascal, team, play. I mean, whatever it may be that day. So they're all getting reps. We're trying to do everything we can to keep those reps as even as possible, you know, especially through the first scrimmage, and then really kind of find out what they got going after that. But
how's DeAndre's health? Would you consider him back at 100% right now?
I would. You know, I mean, he did an unbelievable job rehabbing. You know, when you listen to Jake and those guys talk about the work he put in, he's doing a great job with prehab and aftercare after practice. No swelling, you know, none of those things. So I'm excited to see how fast he's come back. He's moving around really well. You know, I think kind of the next test will be, you know, kind of the first time, you know, he gets knocked around a little bit. But I mean, we all know he's a tough kid. I mean, you know, well before I got here, he was a guy that got knocked down and could get back up. So. Just really excited to see him healthy, running around, and having a good game.
Is it fun as a coach to have guys like that competing and knowing that I mean everybody's kind of on their P's and Q's, so to speak, because they know they want that job?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think all three of those kids, even our younger guys, you know, Nolan, Bo, and Alex. I mean, even those guys, just watching those guys work, but especially, you know, the three older kids, they're all having good camps in their own way. They all have the kind of their own strengths. They all have things, you know, tools that we got to sharpen up a little bit, you know, just to make sure their toolbox, you know, they can operate the offense. But all three of those kids have done really nice jobs, you know, just making sure that when they're in there, you know, that the offense functions the way it's supposed to. And so we're just, you know, trying to make sure that we give those guys equal opportunity to win a job.
Have any of the freshmen stood out to you?
Yeah, and here's what I'll say. Just in terms of our young kids, I think all of them at some point this season, you know, especially the couple positions where we may be a little bit thin, but Keyshawn Helton has done a great job. You know, he's a kid that's really Cam McDonald's going to be a great player someday. Anthony Grant's had a really good camp. You know, young lineman Goss. You know, he's going to be a good player once he starts to fill out, grow into his body. You know, but you know, again, you know, just always want to be really slow with those guys. And you know, really slow to heap a lot of praise. You know, not to give those guys an expectation level that they can't live up to, whether it be to us or themselves, fans, whatever it may be. We've got a good young group offense.
Helton's been mentioned a few times by a few different people.
Yes.
When did you guys find him? When did you offer him?
Well, right as I was getting hired in the process, you know, Coach Taggart and Coach Kelly kind of identified him as a guy that would be a good system fit. But I don't think it has anything to do with his physical ability. I think what makes Keyshawn so special is he is a throwback guy. He loves football. Like how he studies, how he works, how he practices, how he approaches his business. I mean, he approaches his business like a 10-year NFL vet. You know what I mean? So just every single day, he's got an accelerated growth simply because of how hard he works, not only on the football field, but when he's not in his building. He can tell all 11 guys what to do pretty much. You know, and so just really sharp, really about his business, and excited to see him kind of, you know, find a role in the system.
Considering where you came from, I assume you know this question was coming, but in Maryland, I guess what was your experience with the culture there when you were there for 2 years?
Yeah, you know, and number one, I can assure you this, okay, is everywhere that I've ever been in my career, you know, and whether it be Southern Miss, North Carolina, Arkansas State, Maryland, you know, wherever that I've been in my career, I can promise you that I have tried to do two things and two things only. Number one, it's always tell kids the truth. And why do you have to tell them the truth? So you can get their trust. And once they trust you, and once they know that you love them and you take care of them, they'll typically do whatever you ask. And then number two is that's invest in those kids. Okay? Always tell the truth and invest in them either way. You know, I can guarantee you, almost all those kids that I coached at every stop that I've ever been, you know, they can at least tell you those two things about me. So number one, regardless of where I've been, you know, that's kind of what me personally as a human being is about. In terms of the culture there versus here, number one, I'm really excited to be here at Florida State, and then number two, I'm excited to be at a place, where our kids smile at practice, they have a great time in practice, and to work for a head football coach that kind of instills that family atmosphere in all organizations. So, we're incredibly excited to be here, but ultimately at the end of the day, I was a part of it. When we were there, we recruited Jordan, to know his mother really well, and that's devastating. And even more than Jordan, Ellis McKinney, who's there now, who is one of his best friends, just to see how devastated those kids are. Your heart goes out to them, and obviously, just prayers, and thought to those guys, and moving forward, whatever happens, there happens. But just again, prayers to Jordan.
Was it tough for you to read that?
Tough to read.
And I'm talking about like the last week. Obviously, I understand when the young man died. That's obviously tragic.
And I think that's what it goes back to. It's just anytime there's a loss of life, especially a kid like Jordan. Jordan was incredibly special. Not only was he a really good football player and had an incredibly bright future in front of him, but he's everything that you want out of a kid. A great heart, a really calm, comfortable soul, a great demeanor about him. And so just, to lose a kid like him, above and beyond everything else that you read, that's the toughest part of this.
So if you explain what you player, maybe there's more of a way that's considered wrong or considered inappropriate. How do coaches kind of go about that? How do you?
Well, I think for me, and that's what makes me so excited to be here at Florida State with Coach Taggart is we're, his ideals and his values and how we treat our kids here at Florida State are directly in line with how I've always been taught. And that's number one, you coach the problem, not the player. And then, for me personally, I think it's really important that, number one, you always tell kids the truth. Whether they like it or not, but they at least know that you always come from a place of truth so you can have truth. And then number two is that you invest in those guys either way. Whether they run for 1,000,000 yards or no yards, play 1,000,000 plays or no plays, that those kids know that you've got your back. They're yours forever. And I think for me, that's something that, regardless of where I've been, North Carolina, Arkansas State, is just making sure those kids understand that they know that I tell you the truth, and they know that I love them either way. And I think once kids know those two things, they're more than willing to do anything that you ask them to do. You've got to establish those two things first.
What's it like when you go up against the Florida State defense? What are maybe one or two things that you're always thinking about?
Walking in, guys.
Okay, number one is there's always going to be people around people. I mean, everybody's leveled off, everybody's on the line of scrimmage. The ends are going to be up. I mean, just there's pressure. They're going to make you execute. People around those guys are going to make you. They're going to make you go the hard way. There's not a lot of gimme throws. There's not a lot of things that are. There's no freebies out there. And so offensively, I think to me that's the biggest thing. That there's no free yards. Number two, and I think is they're really simple, but because they're simple, it almost makes them a great disguise team because everything comes out of the same shell. So I just think how everything's kind of on top of you and there's nothing for free. And then number two, because they are simple, they get really good at disguise. So when they start to go to other things, middle field, close coverage, stuff like that, they do a great job of making it hard to see.
Are there some guys at each level? Are there guys at each level that you're like, okay, he alters things? And frankly, thinking about number 99 on one end, maybe 28 as a corner. Like, are there guys that?
Well, there's a bunch of them. It's not just 99. I mean, J-Rob's a great player. Burns a great player. Inside with Christmas and when you get Big Marvin back, and Fred Jones is having a great camp. D-Jack at Mike. Woodby's going to be a great player. You got Levant. We're a pretty good group. I think for us, if we can stay healthy, offensively and defensively, we all know at this level, if you can stay healthy, you got a chance. But they've got a bunch of guys, and they got a bunch of great young players too. There's going to be some of those young corners, that are really going to help us throughout the year.
But Helton's good, huh? Helton's good.
He's going to be. And again, don't ever want to put a kid in a position, to not live up to an expectation level. He's got a lot of football left, but I think he's going to be a really good football player.